Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting for January 6, 2025. Let the meeting reflect at 6:30. Welcome to the first meeting of the new year. Would like to make note that we do have all members of the City Council present this evening. We do have Deputy City Administrator Emily Cole Prescott sitting in tonight for City Administrator Bahenko. And would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now moving on to item number 4 this evening is committee correspondence to council. Are there any council members wishing to speak? Councilor Hewitt.
The Dyer Library is having a competition for designing the library cards. If you'd like to pick up a design sheet at the library or online on their website, the last day for submission is January 31st. The public will vote on the submissions between February 10th and February 22nd. The winning ones will be on library cards for a limited edition. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else this evening? Okay, not seeing anyone. Moves us on to item number 5, and there is no general this evening. Item number 6 is public comment. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the council. Okay, not seeing any members of the public wishing to be recognized. Moving on to item 7 this evening, and that is the approval of the minutes. There are 3 this evening, and we do have December 2nd, 2024, December 9th, 2024, and December 16th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, that now takes us to item 8 this evening, and that is consent items. There is 1 item, and that is to confirm the mayor's appointment to the Shoreline Commission of Carol Ann Scontris. Is there a motion to approve the consent?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on the consent item? Okay, roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, item 9 this evening under action items. Action item A is a 1 reading of the city street acceptance request for Chapter 186 standards of Creek's Edge Drive, Lodge Drive, Minetta Drive, Roaring Rock Road, Quarry Lane, and a portion of Waterfall Drive. And that is assigned to Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Elliot Chamberlain of Park North Development, LLC requests city street acceptance review per Chapter 186 standards of the following roads within the Park North Cascade subdivision: Waterfall Drive, portion from Portland Road to Creek's Edge Drive, Lodge Drive, Minetta Drive, Roaring Rock Road, and Quarry Lane. Located off Portland Road, this subdivision was approved in 2008 and subsequently amended over the years. Plan is a mix of commercial and residential uses. The developer has made substantial progress this year in finishing improvements to bring these roads forward for review of city street acceptance per Chapter 186 standards. The city attorney and city staff have reviewed the proposed deeds and associated paperwork, which has been revised in response to staff and legal comments. On December 3rd, 2024, the Planning Board made a positive unanimous recommendation to the City Council to accept these city streets pending finalization of the city engineer's punch list. The developer has since responded to the punch list to the satisfaction of the city engineer and the Public Works Department. Be it ordered that the City Council accept the following as city streets pursuant to Chapter 186 ordinance provisions and as further detailed in the deeds and associated materials included in the January 6, 2025 City Council meeting packet: Waterfall Drive, portion from Portland Road to Creek's Edge Drive, Lodge Drive, Creek's Edge Drive, Minetta Drive, Roaring Rock Road, and Quarry Lane. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Berman. Any discussion or comment on the item? Counselor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. It's always an issue of punch lists, but it appears that those have been completed. It's clear in the presentation. I do have a question for, and perhaps Emily can help us with that. There's a provision in the memorandum from Joe Lavaria that's last sentence on the first page, that DPW is agreeable to a condition which is the performance funding, financing, and it appears this line of credit is being used to handle that. And my question is somewhat high level, is procedurally, who's responsible for making sure that that is in fact in place and is available for access if and when we need it?
Okay, and we do have Assistant Planner Shannon Chisholm with us this evening. Good evening.
Hello, councilors and mayor. Yes, so the question was about letters of credit, correct?
That's correct. And who manages that process, makes sure that they're appropriate in both amount and legalese, and enforces the use of them?
So the letter of credit process, and I'm hoping not to get too far into the weeds with it, so please stop me if I'm going a little bit beyond what you were looking for. But once a project is approved, what we ask the applicant or the applicant's engineers to do is complete what is called the cost estimate worksheet. And it basically gives a base idea of how much the site improvements are going to cost for that project in its totality. That cost worksheet then is sent to the Department of Public Works to be looked over by our engineers to make sure that those numbers look correct from the city's perspective. At that point, generally, the applicant will do one of two things. They will either get a letter of credit from their bank for 150% of that cost estimate worksheet, or they will create a financial guarantee account with the city where they put physical money down for that 150%. So at that point, the planning department is responsible for any sort of drawdowns. Of course, when somebody sends us a request for drawdown, they also have to fill out a form, show how much of what type of work has been done and how much they're requesting back is. Then we send it over, once again, to the Department of Public Works to have it verified by our field inspector and our engineer to be like, well, you know, they said they did 100% of their grading. Did they? And of course, our field inspector and our engineer will verify that, and then we go through the final process of the letter of credit being drawn down upon, which final signature is required from the city administrator before anything is done.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that detail. So the actual control of the transaction rests within the planning department. When all the paperwork is in place and you're overseeing the process with the help of DPW for inspections.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's great. That's a good answer to my question. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other questions or comments. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, it takes us now to item B, and that's one reading. Confirmation of the mayor's appointment of the Economic Development Commission as the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee, and that is Counselor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Staff has been working on a community block grant as part of the Phase 2 of the Community Development Block Grant. The city must form a Community Development Advisory Committee, or a CDAC, to oversee and guide the CDBG project through its planning and implementation stages. The committee is formally created and appointed by the community's governing body. Be it ordered that a community development advisory committee shall be established for the purpose of performing the functions required of the Community Development Block Grant Program. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hewitt. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston.
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Be it ordered that the City Council confirm the mayor's appointment of the Economic Development Commission as the Community Development Advisory Committee. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Berman. Any discussion on this motion? Counselor Johnston?
Thank you. It's just a question of process. So, I believe I've been a part of CDBGs in the past, and I don't remember this being as thorough. So I guess my first question would be, is this a new process, or perhaps we're not following this process in the past? And then, well, I'll wait for that to be answered.
Yeah. Okay, we do have Economic Development Director Tracy Desjardins with us.
The question, I'm sorry, you had asked, has to do with the...
Just the overall process. Is this a new process?
No. This is basically, we went through phase 1, which is where we did the letter of intent, the full application. This is phase 2, and part of phase 2, everything that you have is a requirement through the state at the federal side as well. So that's all.
It's been a long-standing practice of the state and the feds?
Oh, yes. Every time that I've done a CDBG grant, I've had to go through this process.
It was just, like I said, I don't have the experience with it, and so that's probably on past.
It's been a while since Saco has had one. That's why all these, normally the documents that you have before you, I'm able to reuse them because they've already been adopted, but Saco has not had a CDBG grant in quite some time, so the state is saying, okay, Trace, you've got to start all over again from scratch.
And I guess that kind of leads into my next question, which is, it seems appropriate the EDC would be the committee that would, handle this. But if this is going to be a continuous process, or is this a one-time, and then once the grant is fulfilled, that committee, I guess, essentially would go away, so more like an ad hoc?
So what I'm asking is, this is establishing the committee to act as the CDBG. So in going forward, if we want to do other grants, everything is already established, so you're not having to reinvent the wheel again.
Yeah, okay. That clarifies. I thought that was the intent, and so I would just add or suggest to the mayor that this process is fine, but we should update the prescribed roles of the EDC and just add this into the code so that we don't have this come back in the future.
Yep, we'll make a note of that.
That's all.
Okay, anyone else? Counselor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Following along the lines of Councilor Johnson's questioning, I'm just thinking about the actual process itself. I've looked at the list of the Economic Development Commission members. You got a really good group of people there. There's some implication that that group will be responsible for tasks, and I'm just trying to figure out in my own head, are they going to be more advisory, or are we actually going to ask some of these folks who certainly have skill sets that would be appropriate to engage in monitoring certain tasks? Because there's a list of roles here for the CDAC that's on this form. Or are all the tasks going to be handled by your department, and the commission is going to be an advisory?
The commission will be an advisory.
Okay. Good. You got some good people there, so.
Yes, that's why I asked for that group to take on that role.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you. All right, not seeing any additional questions or comments. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, it takes us now to item C, and that is one reading of the Community Development Block Grant Economic Development Program Phase 2, and that is Counselor Johnston.
Thank you. The Economic Development Department submitted a grant on behalf of Tan Bark Molded Fiber Products to purchase the new equipment that would create 20 new full-time jobs. The grant in the amount of $100,000 was awarded to the city. Before receiving funds, the city must complete Phase 2 of the grant process. The Economic Development staff is asking the City Council to take action to adopt the below exhibits as part of Phase 2 requirements. Be it ordered that the City Council moves to adopt the following exhibits to support the CDBG Economic Development Grant Phase 2 requirement: Standards of Conduct, Fair Housing Resolution, Section 504 Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan, Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Policy Statement. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Berman. Any discussion or questions on this one? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, now takes us to item D, and that is one reading and a public hearing. The Community Development Block Grant Economic Development Program Phase 2, adoption of the CDBG resolution. And that is Counselor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Economic Development Department submitted a grant on behalf of Tan Bark Molded Fiber Products to purchase new equipment that would create 20 new full-time jobs. The grant in the amount of $100,000 was awarded to the city. Before receiving the funds, the city must complete Phase 2 of the grant process. Phase 2 consists of holding a public hearing and adopting a city council resolution to accept the $100,000 CDBG funds. Move to open the public hearing.
A motion has been made by Counselor Johnston to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards? I'm sorry, second.
I'll second that.
Counselor Hatch? Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Public hearing is now open. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the council. Okay, not seeing anyone seeking recognition. Counselor Johnston?
I move to close the public hearing and be it ordered that the City Council adopts the Community Development Block Grant Resolution and accepts the $100,000 CDBG funds on behalf of Tan Bark Molded Fiber Products. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hatch. Any discussion or comments regarding the item? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, now moving on to item E, that is one reading of the rules and order of business, and that is Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pursuant to Article 2, Section 2.08B of the City Charter, the council is required to develop its own rules and order of business at the first meeting of the newly elected council each year. Changes were proposed and shared with council at the December 16th, 2024 City Council meeting. The City Council hereby approves the recommended changes made to the rules and order of business as identified in Exhibit 1.
Motion has been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Berman. Any discussion? Counselor Edwards?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to amend the language in the section Rule 1 to include information for when there's a holiday or the summer schedule. So I would like to add this language to Rule 1. In the event of a holiday falling on the regular meeting date, the meeting may be held the fourth Monday of the month. Also, meeting dates in June, July, and August will be the first and third Mondays of the month.
Thank you. Okay, so that is to add the option if there's a holiday on the first, second, or third Monday, that we would be holding on the 4th, and then our summer hours going from 3 meetings a month to the 2. So we should be able to just add that without an amendment. And we've got that noted. Anyone else? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. So I did, I guess, this afternoon send several amendments I view as kind of just clarifying. I don't know if council has had the opportunity to review them. So I can either read those amendments and then just make the motion to adopt them as presented.
Yep. Did all councilors have an opportunity to go through, or any questions?
Councilor Burm, you did not?
I did have a chance to read them, but the public did not, so I think maybe they should be read in just for those purposes.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines. All right, so I'm proposing that under Rule 4, I guess it's number 7, yeah. Approval of the minutes. Right now, it reads that such minutes shall be submitted to the council for approval and/or creation in draft form at a subsequent meeting under new business. We currently haven't been following that. It's always been, for as long as I can remember, either in the packet or via email. So I would just look to amend it by striking approval and/or correction and adding for review and correction in draft form, striking at subsequent meeting under new business, and add via email prior to a vote for acceptance. Minutes are voted upon and adopted by a majority of council vote, or vote of council rather. And, I mean, Madam Mayor, do you want comments from people as I go through them, or should I just read them all and then comments after?
We can go through them all, and then if there are any comments.
And then item 10, under new business, adding, so I'll read. It says, under new business, this is a chance for discussion and presentation with council and is a part of a larger meeting. Items on new business may not require council action, but if they do, the vote would be to move them to the action item sections at a future meeting. I'm proposing to add that only the city council staff, advisory body chairs, or designated representatives shall be permitted to address the council directly during new business unless a motion to suspend the rules is presented and a 4/7 majority of council shall concur therein. I'll just add that that is the previous policy and past rules and orders. And then item 13, executive session. I'm seeking to just add a reference citation to the state website that clearly spells out what the state law is on executive sessions. And then additionally, under executive session item 8, it's just a minor cleanup for code enforcement. It's lacking subsection 1 in paragraph C. And then Rule 16 currently reads about the playing of music, videos, or recordings of others being prohibited. I find this to be needing clarification, so I would suggest, I think clearly the intent after I reread it several times, but I have had members of the public ask me what this means, but I think the intent is for someone to not get up to the podium and play a pre-recorded somebody else's presentation, which totally makes sense to me, but the way it reads kind of implies that a member of the public couldn't record somebody else speaking, or us for that matter, which, again, I think is probably a violation of constitutional rights. So I'm just looking to clarify it by saying that the playing of music, videos, or playing of the recordings of others not present is prohibited, which I don't know if that necessarily achieves it, but it made sense to me. And then Rule 19.3, members of the public. A member of the public may request an item and/or petition to be placed on a future agenda during public comment section of the council meetings. And I would be proposing to add such a request should be submitted to the city administrator for review and shall be acted on within 60 days. That aligns this with the same language that exists for council. I think that it needs to be clear. As a member of the public, you should understand, a time frame for when that request would be before us. Rule 35, materials for public record. All persons interested in the matter being heard by the council shall be entitled to submit written evidence or remarks as well as other graphic evidence. All such evidence presented will be retained by the city clerk as part of the clerk's record of the hearing, and I'm proposing to add and will be accessible on the city's website or in person unless otherwise directed. I just thought that it lacked clarity as to where a member's public submissions would be located or part of the record. Rule 36, written communications, petitions concerning the subject matter of the hearing will be noted, read aloud, or summarized, and I'm proposing to strike by the mayor determines. Clearly it was a clerical error, and add as determined by the mayor.
Okay, great. So we'll take these in two separate. So based on the items that were presented as procedural or clerical corrections, additions, any questions or comments? Councilor Hewitt?
When he refers to Rule 16, my question is, if we do prohibit the videos, are we contradicting ourselves with our new rule that people could participate via Zoom?
I'm sorry, could it repeat that?
If we did do Rule 16 the way it's worded, would we not be allowing? I know we're trying to move forward and allow people to participate via Zoom or a video participation in the future. Would they be contradicting each other?
No. No, this would, in the essence that if somebody, even on Zoom, if they were speaking during public comment, they would not be allowed to present any video recording or audio or anything like that of another person or any council members. So no, even on the web-based meeting schedule, it would still not be something. Councilor Berman?
I think Councilor Hewitt's question is about whether Zoom, with its inherent video nature, may cause some confusion here. And I think adding the words pre-recorded in front of video might solve it. So the playing of video, music, pre-recorded videos, or playing the recordings of others not present is prohibited. That way, the video nature of Zoom doesn't cause any ambiguity in people's understanding. Being on Zoom, and therefore a video to council is okay. Playing a pre-recorded video, either in person or via Zoom, is prohibited.
Oh, okay, so, yep.
Your Honor.
Councilor Johnston, add that.
Yeah, I totally support that.
Okay, anyone else? Councilor Gunn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is more of a clarifying question for Rule 19.3, where the ad is such a request should be submitted to the city administrator for review and shall be acted upon within 60 days. So what are we, by putting that in, we're essentially saying that if a member of the public has an idea or something they want to bring to our attention, they initially bring it to our attention in comment, and then the following day it's not legal, for lack of a better term, until they actually submit an idea or something to the city administrator, and then the clock starts ticking, because I can see why you would put this in, because obviously we've had members of the public often come up and have ideas, and then they may be contradicted by what's actually out there, so therefore we're not getting duplicate requests. So is that the intent of the language, to basically sort of like someone has an idea, but then they have a while to think about it, then they submit to the city administrator, yeah, I definitely want this idea taken up?
Yeah, Councilor Johnson, by the way that reads is that if they're doing it via public comment during a meeting, then submitting the request to the city administrator.
Yeah, again, I just took the existing language, but I think you spell out a good point. It's stating that the only way it would be accepted is if it's from the podium, and that's not my intent. It's just any request, whether it's from the the podium or via email, would then trigger the 60-day window.
Madam Mayor, because for my point is, I can see, plenty of people wanting to come in and they have an idea and they want to present it to the city administrator. Of course, the city administrator would have the responsibility to bring it to us, though. So the way it's written, I guess this would require the resident to bring it to our attention first. I'm honestly amendable to either way, whether we want to have the person say it, just bring it to our attention first, then submit something to the city administrator and work something out, or if they want to go to the city administrator with an idea and the city administrator is perfectly free then to bring it to our attention. I don't know how my colleagues feel about it. I'm personally amendable either way, just for procedural purposes, because obviously not everybody wants to get in front of the podium, but at the same time, certainly people have ideas out there that are certainly valid if they take it to the city administrator.
Councilor Berman?
I think a formal request to the city administrator is an important step. I appreciate feedback from the podium, of course, but you all should look into this, or someone needs to work on this, or this ought to be investigated, isn't a clear suggestion that we put something onto the agenda, but are often the kinds of words that are used. I think a clear written request to the city administrator both clarifies the language of a petitioner and what exactly they believe should be on the agenda, as well as a clear impetus to start that 60-day clock. So feedback from the podium, very appreciated. I think a formal request from the public to put something on the agenda should come in writing to the city administrator.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Johnston, do you have an alternative for that wording based on that information?
Yeah, I'm brainstorming. A member of the public may request an item and/or petition to be placed on a future agenda via a formal request of the city administrator. So we would strike during public comment section of council meetings.
Via email? How would you like that request?
I mean, it can be in person, just a formal
Telephone.
request to the city administrator.
Councilor Hatch, did you have?
Well, I just want to make a point on this. I think if that's the triggering event, I think, and Councilor Berman mentioned this, I think it should be a written request as opposed to a verbal. You don't want to get into the he said, she said things. So I'm totally in support of that option, but I really do think it should have a paper trail in writing.
Okay.
I would agree.
I did have some other comments, if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
First, nice job, Councilor Johnson. I appreciate your efforts here. It's just a wordsmithing. The first change that you proposed under Rule 4, and I could be wrong here, but it says via email prior to a vote of expectance. I think it means acceptance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's just a small language change. And
Expectance to acceptance?
yes.
Eyes are getting old.
Yeah, acceptance, yeah. And then, Mayor McPhail, I'm not sure if you want to delve into the materials that were submitted publicly, or you want to do that separately. I have no other comments on what Councilor Johnston has submitted.
Yeah, we'll finish up with these first.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the proposed changes from Councilor Johnston? Okay. All right. Got those noted. All right, and then Councilor Johnston, the second additions?
And then I would propose, I'm proposing it as Rule 14 because it just looked like it would fit within the rules there. But the rule or the number really doesn't matter to me. Which would be a budget amendment procedures. All amendments to the budget adopted a budget shall follow the process described in section 6.09 of the city charter. Additionally, it is a policy of the city council that all budget amendments will follow a two-meeting process, a first reading followed by a second reading that is held at least 7 days later. I just, again, note that when this came up recently, the administrator asked that we put it somewhere. I really believe it, belongs in that section of the charter, but we can address that later. And for now, having it here at least memorializes what historically we've always followed. And then I would propose a Rule 40, which is role of commission liaisons. Members of the city or of the council are assigned to serve in a liaison capacity with one or more city boards or commissions. The purpose of the liaison assignment is to facilitate communication between the city council and the advisory body. The liaison also helps to increase the council's familiarity with membership, programs, and issues of the advisory body. In fulfilling their liaison assignment, members may elect to attend commission meetings periodically to observe the activities of the advisory body or simply maintain communication with the commission chair on a regular basis. In interacting with commissions, council members are to reflect the views of the council as a body. Assignments to commission liaison positions are made at the beginning of the council term. The mayor will request liaison assignments, which are desired by each member, and will submit recommendations to the full council of the various committees, boards, and commissions which council or city council members will represent as a liaison. A vote of the council will be taken to confirm all appointments. Council liaisons are non-voting members of the boards or commissions and do not count towards a quorum unless specifically stated otherwise in the City of Saco Charter or Codes of Ordinances. The City Charter, Section 2.07, allows for the mayor to serve as a non-voting member of all municipal boards and commissions, except where prohibited by law. And again, the intent here is kind of to bring back some of the language that previously existed and clarify for the future going forward. I think most of us understand that unless it's codified that we're voting members or non-voting members, and there's only a few boards and commissions that have voting members of councilors. So I just thought it was a good idea that we put this here, because I have had members of the public ask why I don't vote at certain meetings or commissions, and then other ones I do have a vote, like traffic safety. And I thought that, again, just clarify our roles.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions or comments regarding those two additions?
Madam Mayor, there are many edits here, so would you like us to bring this back to you with everything addressed where you've indicated to us?
And I think we might have a couple more. Yep.
Thank you.
And I actually just forwarded you the email. Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. So I just want to be clear, we're into the actual packet information that we had before us this evening?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I just had a couple of areas that I think it was more terminology for me than anything, and specifically, we're in Exhibit 1. I just want to give you a page reference here if I can find it. There's a, please forgive me here, I've got to get to the right page. Here we are. And there we go. Scrolling down, I'm going to get you the right page here. There we go. So I'm looking at page 7 of Exhibit 1, where the change is indicated speakers must not indulge in personalities using inappropriate or offensive language or malign motives of council members or staff. I fully support that, the intent of that. I'm not quite sure what indulge in personalities is. If you asked me what I thought that meant, I would tell you that we're trying to avoid situations where we have character assassinations going on publicly. So I'm supportive of the intent. I'm not sure the language is clear, so I just bring that up for consideration. If we want to kind of revisit that. And then there was a similar concern about another Rule 27, which is a proposed insert, new language. There's a reference there that says rather than administrative minutia. And again, I'm not sure that's a clear term. I kind of understand, procedurally, we don't want to get into the weeds, but whether or not there's a clearer way of saying that. So I just bring that up for consideration.
Yep, we can review those.
And then other than that, I think that was it for me, anyway. Thank you.
Councilor Berman?
I had the same concerns about engaging in personalities. I thought personal attacks or personal,
Yep.
something along those lines, may be more clear. Thank you.
Okay, yep. Councilor Johnston, then Councilor Hewitt.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few comments on Rule 27. I certainly think it needs some level of wordsmithing here. I understand the intent, or at least I believe it's giving ample time for staff to provide answers. But as presented, I think this actually lessens transparency for the public. The public has the right to hear administrative minutia. The public has the right to hear clarifications or technical questions, as do other counselors and other staff members that may be present. As a counselor, I can recall many times other counselors had questions during the meetings that kind of shone new light to me or for me on a topic that I may have missed or didn't fully understand. Additionally, I could see how this could be a means, again, not necessarily intentional, but to control the agenda and counselors' personal thoughts and time use, or how they go about preparing themselves, which I certainly would feel could impact outcomes or votes. Personally, I will speak for myself saying that if I didn't feel adequately informed, it definitely will sway my vote, or it will end up leading to a lot more tabling motions. I think it's fair to request that when it's practical, questions should be submitted ahead of time, but oftentimes, as you all know, I have thoughts or questions that arise hours before or even during a meeting, and I generally understand, I may not get the answer right then in a meeting, but I shouldn't feel like I'm violating a rule by asking a question. I think it's shall, the word shall is an imperative command, at least that's my understanding, and it usually is indicating that certain actions are mandatory and not permissive. I don't think any one of us as counselors have that right to impose restrictions such as that on each other, nor does any staff members. I mean, collectively, we as a legislative body, plain and simply, are to conduct our business in the light. So I actually think we should strike the whole thing unless it can be really improved. Like I said, I understand the intent, and I always try to meet that, always have. It's just sometimes questions come up, and the way it is written seems very restrictive. And as a representative of the public, I take exception to it.
Okay, yep, we can either try to rewrite it, bring it back in a simpler form, because the intent is basically to let counselors know if there are questions prior to a meeting, or, not necessarily that you'll get an answer, but at least preparing staff, city administrator, anybody that can address that question, giving them kind of a heads up. So we can attempt to rewrite that into a simpler term so that it doesn't sound authoritative. And then if we choose to strike it, you can amend it when we bring it back. Is that? Okay, Councilor Berman?
Just to add to the discussion, if that's okay, Madam Mayor, I had some similar thoughts about Rule 27, and my interpretation of the intent was that counselors should, when possible, address questions of procedure, how something got on the agenda, why it's on the agenda the way it's on, whether it's one reading versus two, whether the motion is worded in the right way, and/or technical questions. Do we have the information? What's the background? How was this number, acquired? What committees worked on this? Should be submitted in advance, in part so that the counselor can have ready answers, and second, so that staff can prepare answers for those types of questions. And when I was pondering whether I would find that restrictive or not, I was actually kind of reassured myself that because some of the terms, such as administrative minutia, aren't defined, and because the new Rule 40 of enforcement identifies us as a self-enforcing body, that we enforce the rules ourselves and with each other, that if I found something not to be administrative minutia, but to be a substantial question that should be discussed, that's what would make it not administrative minutia and something substantial that should be discussed, because we are the enforcing body of our own rules. And that reassured me somewhat that that rule is unlikely to limit, but rather to set out aspirations for how we will engage in our discussion.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, Councilor Berman, but as I often have done, I always try to look through any rules, any policy, not with the context I have today. And so as a counselor that's been here for a while, I can view it and say, well, ultimately we make these decisions. But if you're a new counselor and you're reading this and it's like, well, this seems really restrictive, and that's my concern, is that we're not going to be here forever. At some point, and I've seen it, the entire council can turn over, and there goes that institutional knowledge and the understanding that you are the elected body and you do have those rights. And the way I read this, it's like shall. So if I'm sitting here and I'm new, I'm going, well, I didn't do that, so I'm just going to be quiet because I don't want to get scolded. That's what rules are, and so that's how I viewed this. It's me, myself, I'm certainly sure of myself enough that I would put my foot down, but other people, and that's just my concern. So.
Yep, noted. Anyone else? Oh, Councilor Hewitt.
I just have a question on Rule 16. It states, any person abusing the provisions of this rule may be prohibited from speaking at future public comment sessions by a majority vote. And I just worry that I understand if somebody's being abusive, that we would want to, calm them down. But by restricting them from any other future vote, are we restricting freedom of speech?
Yeah, that's a great catch. I'm glad you bring that up. I didn't see that, but I definitely don't support it. I mean, everybody has their moments, so, and again, it's subjective, us saying you're out of line, or the mayor saying someone's out of line. I shouldn't, or we shouldn't then say, hey, you're not allowed to speak anymore. That's definitely the opposite of transparent or open.
Yep, and actually, I think that should have read that meeting, not future votes, that they would be restricted at that current meeting. Update. Councilor Berman?
Well, actually, Madam Mayor, I hate to disagree, but I actually read it as all future meetings. I imagine that's a fairly drastic measure, certainly not one that we've encountered in my time on council, where somebody is disruptive or unprofessional. But I imagined this was to deal with somebody who was serially disrupting meetings, somebody who came and was shouting profanities and or preventing the council from doing its business or others from speaking, not just on one occasion, in which case the mayor could ask them to leave and the police could assist in that, but on a chronic basis with the clear ill intent to allow this body to engage in its business and or the public session to continue. And in such a circumstance, I think we may abridge somebody's right to speak to council, and I think having it as the city council body itself and not the mayor actually provides some protections. That would be a pretty high standard to have 4 out of 7 agree to that. So that was my imagination of that. I'd also just remind people that the right to the public comment period isn't in our charter. It's our rules and order of business. It's something that's become a tradition and I think been built into what we do and is part of our values. But people don't have a right to speak to us during public hearings, during meetings. They are our meetings, and we want to hear from the public, and therefore we allow it. but if somebody were to be disruptive in such a way that we couldn't engage in our meetings and/or make productive time forward, I would certainly rather prohibit one person from coming to the public comment period than having to strike the public comment period from our meetings. So I would actually suggest that we leave that for those reasons.
Councilor Gunn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm inclined to agree with Councilor Berman's point of view in the sense that if a person at the dais is, at the rostrum is being disruptive, the mayor, as the chair under Robert's rules, I interpret that as the right to have them removed and get the police involved if it becomes a situation where the public peace, threatened violence, etc., is at hand, though. So we don't have to involve the entire council with that. That's the inherent power of having an elected chair. In terms of someone who is a serial disruptor or there is a threat of violence, of things of that nature, the provision to limit their ability to speak, I see value in that. However, to Councilor Johnston's point of view, certainly we don't want to make anything completely indefinite, though. I would hate to see a situation where it's used for political purposes. You have maybe a speaker who is, basically denied speaking by one mayor, but then is allowed by the other mayors. So I'm not saying that would happen, though, but, politics being what it is these days, eventually national politics does dribble down to the local level, no matter how hard we try to avoid it. So just off the top of my head, as a sort of a compromise, perhaps if someone is that disruptive and it goes to a council vote that this person loses their speaking privileges, there would at least be, sort of like when we do moratoriums on any issue, a 90-day period, a 60-day period, a cooling off period, if you will. Because certainly if it got to that point and the police were involved and there was a matter of public peace, there would be, most people are reasonable enough to realize they've stepped way over the line at that point, but there's no point I see in perhaps indefinitely banning their right to speak or their privilege, to Councilor Berman's point, because they don't have an inherent right because of state law and our tradition. That being said, perhaps a temporary ban or temporary timeout, for lack of a better term, would be more appropriate under the circumstances to give the council that power if we were in that situation.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Again, I just would caution against this. I think it's a very slippery slope. In my time here, as a counselor and as a member of the public, I can recall maybe 2 times that I witnessed a mayor who happened to be my father gavel down a member of the public and call for a recess and have that individual removed. The rest of the time, every action I've seen from members of the public, I might not necessarily agree with what they're saying, but as a representative of the public, we're all subjective to whatever is being said, and I fully understand that and accept that. Again, this is subjective. We're saying we don't like what they're saying. We're going to say, you're no longer allowed here. I just can see how this could. I'm not saying this council. Again, I'm thinking towards the future. I could see how this could be misused. I think the rules we have in place, which again allows for the chair, or in this case the mayor, to gavel down anybody and say you need to stop or correct your behavior or you will be removed, is adequate. So it's, again, just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Berman?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I think I'll just make the motion. I move that we table this voting on these rules in order of business until the corrections can be made and brought back to council for a vote with a formal red line version.
Thank you. Council, the table has been made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Okay, great. We will provide an updated red line version at an upcoming meeting. Okay, that takes us to item F, and that's a final reading, amendments to Saco Code, Chapter 112 for the General Assistance Program appendices, and that is Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Each year, the Maine Municipal Association presents municipalities with new appendices for their city ordinance, which need to be reviewed and adopted. Be it ordered that the City Council approves the second and final reading of amendments to Saco Code, Chapter 112, General Assistance Program appendices. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Berman. Any discussion or comments on the item? Counselor Berman?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just to make clear that we want to adopt the Portland 8 HMFA levels, I would like to amend the motion such that after appendices, there's a comma that says, and adopt the Portland HMFA rates.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made, an amendment has been made by Counselor Berman with a second by Counselor Johnston. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion on the amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote on the main motion only. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item G, and that's a final reading, the petition for zoning map amendment filed by Aaron Gregory to rezone a portion of the 148 Flag Pond Road, map 76, lot 12-2, from the Industrial I zoning district to the low-density residential LDR zoning district, and that is Counselor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Aaron Gregory has filed the enclosed petition for zoning map amendment to rezone a portion of 148 Flag Pond Road, map 76, lot 12-2, from the Industrial I zoning district to the low-density residential LDR zoning district.
Okay, motion has been made by Counselor Hatch. Is there a second?
I haven't made the motion yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jumping the gun here.
Either that or I forgot, which I guess is always a possibility. Yeah.
All the same wording. I'm reading ahead.
So here I'm going to read.
Please continue.
I will. Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Be it ordered that the City Council denies the petition for zoning map amendment filed by Aaron Gregory to rezone a portion of 148 Flag Pond Road, map 76, lot 12-2, from the Industrial I zoning district to the low-density residential LDR zoning district. I move to approve the order.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made by Counselor Hatch with a second by Counselor Johnston. Any discussion on the motion? Counselor Hewitt? Will you?
Just to clarify, if we're denying it, so if
Correct.
we approve, we're not giving him the opportunity to maintain his residence?
Correct.
Okay, my question is, because it has been a residence in continuity, why would we deny it?
Well, that's up to council.
Okay,
That's your choice to vote yes or no.
okay.
Counselor Berman?
Yeah, I understand Councilor Hewitt's question, and I have some similar concerns. You know, the history of this, of course, was, you know, in the LDR zone. We then rezoned it into the industrial zone, in part to allow transit across that land, so some access to the industrial zones, and that was a petition request to council at that point. And now we see another petition to change it back to LDR in order to allow some additional housing. I am honestly on the fence on this one. On the one hand, I speak often about how the city needs more housing. I feel bad for the homeowner who I think thinks they're making a very simple request. It was LDR, put it back to LDR. I want it the way it was. The neighbors are houses. It's conforming. It fits in. It looks like it looks. It looks like it looked a couple years ago. Why can't we just go back? And I also in my mind, I'm imagining the person who buys a house, sees other houses, and then is surprised when the trucks start rolling right next to their house because they're on an industrial access point to an industrial zone right behind their house, and hadn't done the due diligence or didn't really understand or thought that future was far enough away that it wouldn't impact them, and then they come in front of council and say, why do I have logging trucks and big industrial trucks coming right next to my house? I have kids that are trying to play, we can't sleep, what is going on? And we do also need to be developing industrial zones and industrial building, and you know, that tax base needs to grow, as does its job base. So on the one hand, this is simple, we're talking about a small plot of land, we're talking about a couple of houses, and on the other hand, this is going to materially impact the lives of the people who live in those couple of houses, and perhaps the ability of the industrial zone to really meet its potential. And to be honest, I find it complicated, and I'm still a little on the fence.
Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. So I don't have too much new to add from, I feel like this particular item has been kind of floating around for 3 months, 4 months, but so I guess with that said, I do feel, you know, it's kind of important to explain, you know, my position again on this, and likewise to Councilor Berman. I actually wrestled with this decision from 2019 to 2021 as a member of the ZORs, or I throw out acronyms expecting people to understand them, but for the public, the zoning ordinance revision process. And, you know, the majority of us at the time felt that it should have remained the LDR. Council adopted the zoning ordinance as LDR in 2021. Within a few months, I feel it was, the request to rezone to the industrial came. That was the same question we dealt with during that ZOR's process. In fact, the applicant was the same at that time. Council switched to the industrial zone, I think recognizing the need for a more balanced tax base and access into these back lots to achieve that. So again, I voted in favor of switching it to the industrial zone, which was counter to my ZOR's belief. And like I said, I wrestled with it. I ultimately felt that that area, all of that area, was going to see significant change just due to the overall value of that land. We had opportunity zones. So these requests were probably more than likely to eventually becoming more and more, given that that long-established neighborhood that abuts all this valuable land is probably going to see change. Whether current property owners like it or not, it's just the way that existing zone has been. And so, like I said, I wrestled with being sympathetic to that long-established neighborhood that was always like a country way, but also recognizing that there's only so much land and this is a growth area. So again, at that time, I decided to go into the industrial view of that area, and again, largely at that time, I still was wrestling with, should it be industrial, should it be some kind of mix, but that was what was presented, so that's what, you know, I went with. Again, now the request is to go back to LDR, which certainly is not without merit, in my opinion. I fully understand when you look at the lot why you would say, well, what's the big deal? And I appreciate that request. So, you know, like I said, likewise, I've kind of wrestled with this over the weeks. And I will say, you know, perhaps if it was a guarantee of truly affordable housing, that would meet a goal of mine as a counselor, that I, you know, might feel more inclined to switch back to the LDR, but that's really a contract zone, and that's not what's before us. And you know, one which I don't know if other members of council would even support, or the city at large, but you know, I only say that because there's been comments about, oh, we need affordable housing, and it's like, well, affordable housing and just housing, there's a difference, and if it met a true definition of affordable housing, like I said, I might be more inclined. But overall, I'll just say that to me, the issue remains really still of not just having a clear picture, as I didn't almost 5 years ago, of what the city desires of this area. I think going back and forth with zones is going to ultimately do the city more harm than good. You know, certainly based off just one property owner's desire, right? We can't grow in an orderly fashion in that way. So I guess, you know, as I've said previously, I think, and we're working towards that. Planning department is and has been, you know, working towards that corridor and trying to figure out, you know, what's best for the land uses out there. That's going to take time, and as I said, we have to have a more holistic approach, or this will just continue. And if I was, as Councilor Berman stated, you know, in my mind I'm envisioning, oh well, what's the big deal? Okay, well if I was buying a single-family home in a low-density area, and it's like, okay, I bought my home, and then a year later, 5 years later, I've got a truck route, 18-wheelers coming out where my kids used to play. They're going to be in here yelling and screaming, rightfully so. They're going to be in here yelling and screaming, saying, you know, what the hell was City Council thinking at the time? I'd like to avoid that. So for those reasons, I'm, you know, supportive of the denial. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Councilor Berman.
I think also, just to finish maybe answering the question, if one wanted to let this turn into LDR, one would vote no on the motion that was proposed and do another motion to approve the petition. So that's the way I think we would do it at this point.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. I took the liberty of going back, and I had a slow day today, so I went back and looked at video of our council discussions on this issue. I've also, as liaison to the planning board, been a witness to the really deep, thoughtful, intelligent conversations that have centered on this issue. We have a recommendation from the planning board based on that thorough analysis to deny this petition. I go back and look at the the council dialogue. I am firmly in support of retaining the commercial industrial zoning for that parcel. With all due respect to the argument that it's currently residential, I think if you think about the evolution of Biddeford Crossing, for example, when I was a kid, that was all rural residential. Today, all those houses are gone, maybe not because they wanted to, but because the zoning was changed. And as I recall, there's probably one or two, maybe three residents left, and those that are there are trying to sell because they don't want the tractor-trailer rigs driving by their house. So I don't think this is unique. I'm not a big fan of zoning line vacillation back and forth and back and forth. We had a Azores committee that worked hard at this. We had a council who chose to make a change. We had a planning board that vetted this very thoroughly, and I give them lots of credit for that. So, and I think if my notes are correct, and I would stand corrected if I'm saying something that isn't accurate, I believe the current landowners acquired the property after it was rezoned. So when they bought the property, they knew it was in the industrial zone. And to think that you can come to the city council and say, hey, I made a big mistake, you know, can you help me out here? I'm just, that kind of rubs me the wrong way. I mean, if you're going to buy real estate and invest in real estate, I think there's a certain level of due diligence that we should expect of you. And the fact that you, and maybe you knew this going in, I don't know, but that's another issue for me as well. So I am firmly, very firmly in support, as reflected in the motion that I read into the record, of denying this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Gunn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Definitely feel I should make a comment considering it is in my ward, and I made it a point to attend those planning board meetings because I wanted to see what was going to become of that land, considering we went through all the trouble of changing it so you could access that land for industrial purposes. Because honestly, a couple of years ago, it never made a lick of sense to me that we would have land that was set aside for industrial that you couldn't access for industrial purposes. Seemed, well, completely against common sense. And in the meantime, since then, we have approved of putting a new school in a business park with a limit, again, faced a lot of criticism, especially I was on the record of that because we were giving up some of our industrial footprint because the circumstances pretty much required it. To have land back there that is good for industrial purposes long-term, I know it's hard to imagine right now because all there is, you can see from Flag Pond Road, is just mowed down former forest. That being said, the potential is there, and we really must look at it long-term because we are giving up a significant amount of industrial footprint in the heart of the city with the new school. We're going to have industrial footprint somewhere if we're going to have a tax base that's going to be in any way equitable for our citizens. If we completely skew our development in terms of just strictly housing, and to Councilor Johnson's point, not necessarily affordable housing, as opposed to having a balance between housing, affordable housing, however we defined it, and industrial use. And I'm of the opinion that, put it this way, if you ever drive through South Portland in the Broadway neighborhood, they have to put up a large sound breaking wall because all those poor people live next to Interstate 295. It's not practical to live next to an interstate. And I really don't see the future of that growing as a residential area because who really wants to live literally on top of an interstate? Not very many people. That being said, it is primed to be used for industrial purposes. To Councilor Hatch's point, we cannot, and I'm going to build on that a little bit, we can't simply yo-yo between zoning for that simply because we haven't got the growth that we want there for industrial purposes at the speed that we want. Otherwise, it's just someone's going to come in and say, look, it's not being developed, so therefore change it back to what I want. And a couple of years later, when that person sells the land, because we're now at the second or third landowner of this property, it's going to be the same thing. So therefore, you know me, I've always been often critical of comprehensive plans because obviously they're not as tight as zoning, but we have a plan for this area. We have a desire for this area, and the zoning actually matches up for it, though. So I am in favor of keeping it the way it is and hope that in the coming decades we can really start to improve and expand our industrial footprint in that area because I think that's going to be a benefit to the citizens at all. And at the same time, when we talk about affordable housing, follow our comprehensive plan and actually put it in places where it's practical to have it, regardless of people's feelings about, build up in the urban areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I would just point out for the record, and again, I'm not trying to debate Councilor Gunn. I just think it's important that I clarify because it has been an inaccurate statement among people, and including the public. The school site, both whether it was at the Sweetser location and its current site, was never zoned industrial. It's been in the Portland Road zone. I just think that's important that it's understood. Otherwise, we would have been doing a zone change as being suggested. So, but I do get the point because it's abutting.
I stand corrected on the issue, but at the same time, my thoughts are thinking that it wouldn't be residential housing. But point is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does that help, Councilor Hewitt? Okay, there is a motion on the floor to deny the petition from change to the I zone to the LDR zone. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn? I'm sorry, Councilor Parks?
No.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
No.
Counselor Johnston?
To deny, yes.
Motion passes 5-2. Okay, that now takes us to item H, and that's one reading and the election of the parliamentarian, and that is Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the first meeting in Rule 38, Rule and Orders of Business states, at the first meeting in January, the City Council shall elect from its body a parliamentarian to serve for 1 year. The mayor and the deputy mayor would be excluded from serving in the role as parliamentarian. Be it ordered that the City Council move to elect Councilor Joshua Parks as parliamentarian of the City of Saco for the term of 1 year, commencing January 6, 2025. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second?
Who was? Second by Counselor Hatch. Any discussion on the item? Counselor Berman?
Just out of curiosity, does Councilor Parks seek, and accept the nomination? And is he willing to take on the responsibilities of learning Robert's rules and serving as parliamentarian?
Counselor Parks?
I absolutely am. And I just want to say, for my part, I have a lot of experience working in Robert's rules from my time in student government, so it's not a lost concept on me.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, Counselor Parks. Okay, that now takes us to item 10, and that is an administrative update. And with us again this evening, we have Deputy City Administrator Prescott.
Thank you. For this week's administrative update, VHB is now under contract as the city's consultant for the Housing Action Plan. The firm was chosen through an RFP process. We'll be kicking off that plan in early 2025, and there'll be various opportunities for engagement and comment along the way. So we look forward to doing that. We also have a donation of a patrol bicycle from Bill Dodge Auto Group. They're donating a GMC Hummer Recon e-bike to our police department. This will replace one of our existing police bicycles for use in the downtown patrol during warmer months, obviously not right now. And then for our upcoming agenda preview for next meeting, January 13th, we have KRT appraisal presentation, which was rescheduled from our December 16th workshop item. And we will have an I-195 and Ocean Park Road study presentation, as well as other normal agenda items.
Great, thank you very much. Any
Thank you.
questions or comments for Deputy City Administrator? Okay, not seeing any. Takes us to item 11, and that's council discussion and comment. Any councilors wishing to speak? Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. I would like to address the December 16th, 2024 4-3 council vote to approve the zoning text amendment for Cosmic Solutions. It's almost 3 weeks later, and as one of the 4 affirmative votes, I remain conflicted about the resolution of this issue. I don't want to speak for my council colleagues in defending their votes, but I will admit that I was torn between complying with City Charter Article 2, Section 2.09A, and not penalizing a Saco-based business by delaying action based on an improper application of the city charter, which was no fault of the business owner. I went back and reviewed some of the meeting comments, and I suspect that others felt the same way. Councilor Johnston and I frequently discuss the merits of pending agenda items based on principle. And I think we both share a strong belief that consistent adherence to a principled approach when completing our council duties is extremely important. He and Councilor Hewitt made a compelling argument before the December 16th vote about adhering to Article 2, Section 2.09A. Some of us, including myself, chose a path that deferred to the benefit of a business owner, ignoring the requirements under the charter that we all took an oath to support. At that time, I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place when I cast my vote. So as I said, I went back and reviewed the video recordings of all previous council discussions on this issue, and it appears to me that if the ordinance change effort had initially moved forward under a process of separating Chapter 237.13 and Chapter 168.3a, the outcome would have been the same. I think we would have ended up with a favorable vote for the applicant. That's just my perception. So, with an eye towards mitigating the potential negative effects of precedents, I would like to ask that we direct the city administrator and staff to bring forth an agenda process in the near term that would allow city council to properly memorialize changes to Chapter 168 that retroactively correct the alleged missteps that occurred with the aforementioned December 16th, 2024 City Council vote. I do assume some responsibility for having to create this step. I'm open to suggestions from city administrator and staff as to how we can accomplish that, if we can accomplish that, and what the legal ramifications are. I think it's important for us to do something like that to avoid the prospect of having a similar activity occur in the future that may be promulgated by a citizen. And then finally, I just would further ask that we collectively, council and staff, including myself, scrutinize and improve this process to avoid future similar irregularities moving forward in the future. I know that Councilor Johnston on numerous occasions brought that point forward. I'm going to personally apologize for not being as attentive to those comments, but I think we can all work together collectively to make sure that a similar situation doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hatch. Emily, you have that jotted down for review?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, and we as staff have looked at this as well.
Perfect, thank you. Councilor Berman, then Councilor Johnston.
Yeah, I just want to step in here for a second. I'm for procedures, regulations, rules, and consistency. That protects us, it protects applicants, it protects the public, it protects the process. That's all very important, and of course adherence to the charter by the city staff, and by the council is absolutely imperative. So I appreciate everyone's attention to that. I was a little confused during our prior discussion, and I am a little confused now about the reference to section 2.09A of the charter, which reads, it's about ordinances in general, and it reads, form. Every proposed ordinance shall be introduced in writing and in the form proposed for final adoption. No ordinance shall contain more than one subject, which shall be clearly stated in its title. The enacting clause shall be, the city of Saco hereby ordains. Now, it's not clear to me from reading that one ordinance can't affect more than one chapter or section at once. It's clear to me that the ordinance must have one subject. In this case, it was enacting an opt-in for recreational manufacturing. That is one subject. To enact that subject, multiple chapters, and therefore parts of code had to be impacted, but it's not clear to me that I would interpret section 2.09A as prohibiting that. Now, prior practice may have prohibited that, and in order to be clear and clearly accomplish compliance with that section, that's been done, but to me that's not clearly spelled out, right? Changing the chapters to comply with opting in at the state level seems to me to be one subject. And while initially the application by the business didn't have a red-lined version, later it did, which then also accomplished the in writing and in the form proposed for final adoption. So in my mind, and one of the reasons why I voted yes is as I read the charter and that section, it seemed to me that we were in compliance. And if there's another interpretation that requires that it's not one subject, but also just one section or chapter, I think that'd be wise to put that in our rules of order of business. Otherwise, I think this confusion could continue.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Well, let me first say I wasn't expecting really any of this discussion, but I do appreciate the apology, Councilor Hatch. I certainly left here 3 weeks ago rather upset. I have continued for 3 weeks to have this continuously eat away at me because that's who I am as a person when it comes to policies and procedures. The outcome, as I've often said, I care less about. It's how you get to that outcome. If I'm on the losing side, it is what it is. But when you're on the losing side and you feel like the process was extremely flawed, then those are those things that you often hear me say, well, I remember this one. They register with me and they don't go away. So at this point, I've got 11 and a half years or thereabouts of those moments where I don't know what I could have done differently. I just tried to caution it so we could table it. I suggested that. I did not like how certain staff pushed the issue towards, hey, let's do this, even though, I'm sitting here as the former parliamentarian, and it's spelled out in what the authority is, and I'm trying to slow down saying, hey, this is a charter issue. And so while I agree, Councilor Berman, about the language of the charter, I think it's clear that you were talking about two separate issues, particularly if you look at that motion. The public, and I can show you, because I went back and got it, even though I had previously asked for what the public saw in the paper, it does not state that you're amending the other section of the code. It simply addressed one issue. That's not open, that's not transparent. I still to this day, I feel dirty about it. Because if you were somebody that was interested in that topic, you would never have known an outcome happened. You would be very hard-pressed to go back through the record to even find it. And I did, following this meeting, as I indicated to you, Councilor Hatch, I did seek my own personal legal counsel, which I've done on several occasions previously. And I was so irate that I considered filing an appeal. But I also have to wrestle with the fact that I have to act in the best interest of the city as an elected official. Ultimately, I have chosen not to go that way. But again, as we enter this new year, I'm just asking all of us to do a better job at recognizing all of our issues and trying to address them collaboratively instead of pushing things through. I've never done that in all my time here. If there's a counselor that has an issue, I've always gone out of my way to try to address whatever they're wrestling with. And just, I expect the same back to me. So I appreciate, your sentiment, and I would agree. It was something I was going to propose myself, saying, hey, let's correct the perceived wrong. I also equally didn't feel it was appropriate that we put the city solicitor on the spot. He didn't have, he's giving an opinion on a subject matter that he did not have what I was stating to. That was just wrong of us to begin with. Anyway, I appreciate it. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Gunn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To change topics for a little second, I think it's imperative that we note the passing last week of former President Jimmy Carter. At the age of 100, he was our oldest lived former president. James Earl Carter Jr. was 39th President of the United States, 1977-1981, a champion of democracy and human rights. He was the 2002 recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. I found myself particularly moved by it. It seems it's a passing of an era. A true citizen politician, naval veteran, who gave up a promising career to, after a member of his family died, to become a peanut farmer. And he got involved in civic life and rose to the highest in the office in the land. And that is about as American as a story as it possibly gets. And I just want to make note of that because, we're all citizen politicians here, though, and I think that it's kind of feeds into, why we do this, though, is because we all have ideas of how we want to help our community and the people in our community live better lives, and that's why we're all here. And I'd be remiss to note that today is January 6th, and this is the 4th anniversary of the Capitol riots. In my opinion, they're one of the darkest days in our civic life, and I think on an anniversary such as this, though, it's imperative that people who, such as us, who take the oath to the state, federal, and our local constitutions, renew our commitment to democracy and the rule of law. Especially, the years ahead may be a little difficult, but if we adhere to that and have good faith amongst ourselves, I think we're gonna turn out okay all across the country. So, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Administrator?
I was just going to say that we'd be happy to work with city administration on an SOP for ordinances in the future. In other times, we have brought forward whole packages of ordinances under the topic of housing or whatever the primary topic is, and explained how the different sections have to work together like puzzle pieces. So certainly happy to work through that with city administration.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, that takes us to item 12 this evening, and that is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn. 1. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.